My father called me a beggar at his door, and my brother smiled like I had nothing. But they never knew I held the papers that controlled the house. And when they tried to sell it, my quiet revenge began. Now I am going to share my full story with you. My father called me a beggar at his door on a cold Thursday evening, with my mother standing behind him and my brother smiling from the hallway like he had been waiting 16 years to see me small. He thought I had come back to ask for a bed, a meal, and mercy. He thought the suitcase in my hand was proof that life had finally beaten me down enough to crawl back to the people who had never really wanted to know me. What he did not know was that I had driven 4 hours to stop him from signing away the only house my grandfather ever protected, and he definitely did not know that, on paper, the house he called his had already been in my hands for years. The Harrow house sat at the end of Tin Mill Road in Elderbrook, Kentucky, with its white porch, its red barn, and the old walnut tree that leaned over the gravel drive like it was tired of watching our family make the same mistakes. I parked across the road at first, not in the driveway. I wanted 1 minute to look at the place before I stepped into it again. The porch light was still crooked, the left gutter still sagged near the corner. The front door still had the deep scratch near the handle from the summer Kellen tried to move a couch through it and blamed me when the wood split. It was strange how a house could look the same and still feel like it had already started to say goodbye. There were 2 trucks in the driveway. My father's old blue Ford sat near the barn, covered in dust. My brother Kellen's black truck was parked closer to the porch, shining clean, too expensive for a man who was always 1 bad month away from asking somebody else to cover him. Through the dining room window, I saw a blue folder on the table and a manila envelope beside it. I could not read the words from the road, but I did not need to. I had spent the last 8 years reading trouble before people were brave enough to name it. Trouble has a shape. It sits on tables. It hides under polite words. It waits for old people to get tired. I had not come home because I was homeless. I had an apartment in Louisville with a paid lease, a clean kitchen, and a view of a parking garage I liked more than I should have. I had not lost my job either. I ran a small property compliance firm that helped old families, churches, and small businesses understand the papers they were too afraid to touch. Deeds, trusts, liens, easements, tax notices, purchase options. The boring things that decide whether a family keeps what it loves or loses it because someone louder told them not to read. But I did not dress like that woman when I came home. I wore old jeans, a gray coat, plain shoes, and no jewelry. I carried 1 small suitcase and 1 leather document bag. I wanted to see who would open the door when they thought I had nothing. I crossed the road slowly and climbed the porch steps. The boards complained under my feet, the same way they had when I was 18, and leaving with 2 boxes and a scholarship letter my father called a fancy excuse to abandon us. I knocked once. Voices inside stopped. A chair scraped. Then the door opened, and my father stood there, with 1 hand on the frame, blocking the warm light from the hallway. Bryce Harrow was 66 now, but pride kept him standing like he was still 40, and strong enough to carry the whole county on his back. His hair had gone silver at the temples. His face had more lines, but his eyes were the same. Hard first, soft later, maybe, if nobody was watching. "Tesslyn," he said. Not "honey," not "are you okay," not even "why are you here?" Behind him, my mother Marnie stood in the hall with a dish towel twisted in her hands. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her, smaller inside her own sweater. and behind her, leaning near the dining room doorway, was Kellen. My older brother, the golden son, the man who could fail 3 times and still be called unlucky, while I could succeed quietly and still be called cold. I looked at my father and gave him the lie I had practiced in the car. "I lost my apartment," I said. "I just need a few nights to figure things out." My mother's mouth opened a little, but no words came out. Kellen's smile moved before the rest of his face did. My father looked down at my suitcase, then back at me. "So now you come back like a beggar at my door," he said. The words hit exactly where he meant them to. Not because they were true, but because he wanted them to be. He wanted me small enough to understand the rules before I stepped inside. The house behind him smelled like coffee, lemon cleaner, and old wood. My mother still did not move. "Bryce," she whispered. He did not turn around. "This family's already carrying enough," he said. "I'm not carrying her, too." Kellen came forward then, slow and careful, like a man stepping into a scene he had already written. "Dad," he said, soft enough to sound kind, "don't let this become your problem. Tess always shows up when things get hard, then leaves when someone asks her to be useful." I almost laughed. I had been useful to this family in ways none of them had cared to count. I had paid the property taxes once when my grandfather was sick, and my father had been too proud to open the county notice. I had sent money when my mother's dental bill went unpaid. I had reviewed an insurance letter for the barn roof and saved them from accepting half of what they were owed. I had done all of it quietly because my grandfather asked me to keep peace where I could. But peace and silence are not the same thing. I knew that now. "I won't be in the way," I said. My father's face closed. "There's no room." The Harrow house had 4 bedrooms, a sewing room, a back office, and a finished attic nobody used. But I understood. There was no room for the version of me they had created. The broke daughter, the proud daughter, the one who left, the one who came back at the wrong time with a suitcase and no offering. I nodded once. "Okay." That answer bothered them more than tears would have. My father expected begging. Kellen expected defense. My mother expected me to break a little, maybe because that would have made her silence feel less cruel. I gave them nothing. I turned, stepped down from the porch, and started toward my car. I was halfway across the yard when I heard the door open behind me. My mother hurried down the steps, holding an old brown sweater and a paper bag. She did not call my name until she was close enough to keep my father from hearing. "Tess," she said, breathless. "Take this. It's cold." I looked at the sweater. It had belonged to my grandfather, Silas. I knew the missing button near the collar. I knew the faint smell of cedar and dust. She pushed the paper bag into my hand, too. "Muffins," she said. "From this morning." I wanted to ask her why she could follow me into the yard, but not open the door wider. I wanted to ask her how many times a mother could choose fear and still call it love. Instead, I held the sweater and the paper bag and said, "Thank you." Her eyes filled, but she looked toward the house before a tear could fall. That was my mother. Always checking who might see her feel something. "Please don't drive tired," she said. Then she went back inside and closed the door softly, like a soft door could make a hard thing kinder. I drove 12 minutes to the Blue Kettle Inn near the county road, took a room on the 2nd floor, and set the muffins on the desk untouched. The room had a green carpet, a humming heater, and a painting of a lake nobody in Kentucky had ever seen. I put my suitcase near the chair, took my laptop from the leather bag, and opened the file I'd come to Elderbrook to protect. The folder on my screen was called Harrow Family Land Trust. My grandfather had created it 12 years earlier, after my grandmother died, and after he finally admitted that my father and Kellen both loved the house in ways that could ruin it. My father loved it as proof of himself. Kellen loved it as money he had not spent yet. My grandfather loved it as land, memory, work, and shelter. He did not trust loud love. He trusted paper. I was 22 when Silas first took me to Rowena Pike's office behind the old courthouse. I still remember the smell of her waiting room, old coffee and printer ink. My grandfather sat beside me in his brown jacket and told me something I did not understand until years later. "A house is not protected by love, Tess," he said. "It is protected by paper." He placed the Harrow house and the 28 acres behind it into a private family land trust. My parents kept the right to live there for life. They could repair it, use it, plant gardens, host Sunday dinners, fight in the kitchen, and grow old under its roof. But they could not sell the land by themselves. They could not sign it away because someone scared them. They could not let Kellen borrow against it, trade it, or turn it into another one of his plans. After Silas died, the trustee seat passed to me. My father never read the full trust. He said trusts were for rich people and cowards. Kellen called it Granddad's old paper. My mother said she did not understand it and folded laundry whenever it came up. So I understood it for all of them. I kept the file active. I updated the mailing address. I paid 2 late tax bills from my own account and wrote them down as trust advances, not gifts, because I had learned not to mix family and money without records. Every year I checked the county property page. Every year the house stayed quiet, until 3 weeks ago. My mother had called me and left a voicemail that lasted only 14 seconds. "Kellen says we have to sign before the county meeting," she whispered. "I don't understand the paper. Your father won't listen, and Beckett says—" Then the line cut off. I called back 7 times. She did not answer. The next day, she sent one text. "Everything is fine. Don't worry." People only write "don't worry" when worry has already entered the room. So I came. That first night at the inn, I opened every document again. The recorded deed into trust, the trustee certificate, the lifetime residence clause for Bryce and Marnie Harrow, the restriction on sale or transfer, the tax receipts, the old letter from Rowena Pike confirming my authority after Silas's death. Then I searched the county planning calendar and found the meeting my mother had mentioned. A proposed highway connector was being discussed the next month. The line on the public map ran close enough to Tin Mill Road to make every developer in 3 counties suddenly interested in land that used to be called too far out. I sat back in the motel chair and stared at the screen. That explained Beckett. I knew the name from the voicemail. Beckett Sloan. Sloan Ridge Development. He bought tired land from tired families and turned it into storage units, medical plazas, and clean little neighborhoods with names that erased what had been there before. He was not the first man to look at old people and see acreage. He would not be the last. The question was not whether he wanted the Harrow land. The question was who inside my family was helping him get close enough to touch it. The answer, I already knew, was Kellen. I went back to the house the next morning with groceries in my hands and my face arranged into something harmless. My mother opened the door this time. Her eyes moved from the grocery bags to my face, then behind her, as if permission lived somewhere over her shoulder. "I didn't mean to put pressure on anyone," I said. "Let me help for a few days while I figure things out. I won't stay here. I'll just come by." That made it easier for her. Help without responsibility. A daughter without a bed. She let me in. My father was in the living room, watching the weather with the sound too high. He gave me one look and went back to the television. Kellen's truck was not in the driveway yet, but his presence was everywhere. A stack of papers sat near the fruit bowl. A moving company brochure was tucked under a magazine. My mother had 3 unopened letters from the county on the sideboard, all placed together like she thought neatness could lower their power. I made myself useful. I put milk in the refrigerator, I wiped the counter, I took out the trash. I fixed the loose screw on the pantry handle with a butter knife because the toolbox had been moved and nobody knew where. Quiet work has a strange magic. People stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as part of the room. That is when they talk. Kellen came around noon with coffee for himself and my father, nothing for my mother. He kissed her cheek anyway, a quick performance. Then he saw me at the sink. "Still here," he said, "just helping Mom." That's new. I smiled like it did not land. He hated that. My father came into the kitchen, and the two of them moved toward the dining table. I kept rinsing a pan that was already clean. Kellen lowered his voice, but not enough. Men like him never lower it enough around people they have already decided are stupid. "Beckett is giving us a clean way out," he said. "We sign, we close, and Mom never has to worry about this place again." My father grunted. "What about the old trust?" For 1 second, the water in my hands felt colder. Kellen did not pause. "That paper is old, Dad. It doesn't matter anymore. Rowena made it sound bigger than it is because lawyers like making simple things complicated." My father said nothing. Kellen leaned in. "You own this house. You worked for it. Granddad didn't build that trust to trap you." "No," I thought. "He built it to trap you." My mother came in then, and Kellen changed his tone. "Mom, this is good. Smaller place, less work, money in the bank, no more stairs, no more roof worries. You deserve easy." My mother looked at the floor. "I like my stairs." Kellen laughed gently, the way people laugh when they want fear to sound childish. "You like the idea of them. You don't like falling on them." I turned off the water before I forgot myself. That afternoon, Beckett Sloan arrived in a dark coat and expensive boots, clean enough to prove he had never stepped anywhere by accident. He was about 50, with silver hair, a soft voice, and the kind of careful smile men use when they have learned that pressure works better when it sounds like kindness. Kellen brought him in like a guest of honor. "Bryce," Beckett said, shaking my father's hand with both of his. "Marnie, good to see you both again." Again, so this was not new. His eyes passed over me. "This is my sister," Kellen said. "Tesslyn, she's visiting." "From out of town," Beckett said, as if that explained everything about me. I poured coffee. I was very good at looking like a woman people did not need to explain things to. Beckett sat at the dining table and opened his folder. "I know this is emotional," he said. "A house like this carries history. But history also carries cost. Roof, taxes, land upkeep, insurance. These things do not get cheaper because we love them." My father nodded slowly. My mother wrapped both hands around her mug. Beckett continued. "What we're offering is clean. Fair price. Quick close. Time for you to step into a simpler season of life." "Simpler season," I repeated in my head. That was a beautiful way to say 45 days to leave. Then Beckett said the sentence that told me exactly who he was. "Old papers can scare people, but they rarely stop progress." He did not look at me when he said it. He looked at my father. But I felt the words cross the table. Kellen slid a document toward my father, but my mother's hand moved first and touched the edge of the page. "Could Tess maybe look at it?" she asked, so softly I almost missed it. The room changed. Kellen smiled, but his eyes went flat. "Tess doesn't need to be dragged into this." "I used to read property files," I said, keeping my voice light. "At my office job." My father made a sound through his nose. You couldn't keep your own life together, but you want to read mine." Kellen looked down to hide his smile. I nodded like he had made a fair point. "You're right. I just thought I'd offer." Beckett closed the folder halfway. Not all the way. Just enough. I saw the top line before it disappeared. Purchase option agreement. Below that, I caught the number. $410,000. I knew the house and 28 acres were worth more than that, even before the highway map. After the connector became public, the value could climb past $1 million without trying. Beckett was not offering rescue. He was offering a quiet theft before the town learned what the land was about to become. I kept pouring coffee. The next morning, I went to the county courthouse. Elderbrook's courthouse looked exactly like a building that had watched generations of families make bad choices and file them in permanent ink. The recorder's office was on the first floor, past the tax window and a bulletin board full of church dinners and lost dogs. A woman with round glasses and short gray curls looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I hope so," I said. "I'm checking records on the Harrow parcel out on Tin Mill Road." Her nameplate read Juniper Knox. I remembered her from high school, though she had been older than me and already married by then. In a town like Elderbrook, nobody is ever fully a stranger. "Harrow," she said, typing. "Old Silas's place?" "My grandfather." Her face softened for half a second. "Good man. Paid in checks with perfect handwriting." That sounds like him. She pulled the record. I already had copies, but I wanted to see if anything new had touched the file. The screen confirmed what I knew. The property was held by the Harrow Family Land Trust. No sale, no transfer, no recorded option. Not yet. Juniper lowered her voice a little. "Had somebody asking about that land last week." I kept my face easy. "Somebody?" "Tall man, city boots, not from here. Wanted to know how fast a memorandum of option shows up after recording." She glanced at me. Developers always think county clerks don't know when they're circling. "What did you tell him?" "That paper shows when it shows, and if the title has trust restrictions, somebody better read them before they start celebrating." For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt something close to relief. "Can I get certified copies of the trust deed and the residence clause?" I asked. Juniper looked at me a little differently then. "You know what you're doing." "I'm trying to." "No," she said, clicking through the file. "Trying looks louder." I left the courthouse with certified copies in a yellow envelope and drove straight to Rowena Pike's office. She was 70 now, maybe more, still working from the same brick building with the same brass lamp in the window. When I walked in, she looked over her glasses and said, "I wondered when you'd come." That was Rowena. No hello wasted where truth would do. "You knew?" I asked. I knew Beckett Sloan had been sniffing around Tin Mill Road. I knew Kellen had called twice, asking questions he pretended were general. And I knew your grandfather did not choose you because he expected the house to stay peaceful. She stood slowly, went to a file cabinet, and took out a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in my grandfather's handwriting. For Tesslyn, when the house becomes a prize instead of a home. I touched the paper but did not open it. Rowena watched me carefully. "You have authority as trustee, strong authority, but authority is not magic. If your parents sign bad papers, we can fight them, but fighting after the ink dries is slower, uglier, and more expensive. The cleanest place to stop a bad document is before the pen moves." "I know." "Then make sure you are in the room when the pen moves." That night at the inn, I opened my grandfather's letter. "Tess, if you are reading this, someone has forgotten what the house is for. Maybe your father, maybe Kellen, maybe a stranger in a nice coat. I hope I am wrong, but old men earn the right to trust patterns. Your father is proud, and proud men can be led by shame. Your brother loves shortcuts and calls them plans. Your mother will understand more than she says, and say less than she should. I chose you because you listen before you speak. They may call you cold when you protect what they were too careless to understand. Let them. A house does not need loud love. It needs someone awake. Do not fight with anger if paper will do. Make them read. Make them see. And if they shut the door on you, remember this. A door is only wood. The truth is heavier. Granddad. I read it twice. Then I folded it along the same crease and put it behind the trustee certificate. The next 2 days showed me the rest of the shape. Kellen was not just helping Beckett. He was desperate. I found a civil judgment from a failed equipment lease, a lien tied to his truck, 2 collection filings, a business address that led to a mailbox store. Debt by itself did not make him evil. Life can corner anyone. But cornered people show you who they are by what they are willing to use as a ladder out. Kellen had chosen our parents' house. The real proof came from Noelle by accident. She came by on Saturday, wearing a cream coat and carrying a folder of paint samples, which was an interesting thing to bring to a house she claimed her in-laws were leaving for their own good. She sat at the dining table with my mother and talked about fresh starts and downsizing and less stress, while her phone kept lighting up beside her coffee. I did not touch it. I did not need to. One message preview stayed on the screen long enough. Beckett. Once your parents sign authority, trustee issue becomes our problem. Kellen's fee releases after option records. Trustee issue. So they knew. They knew the trust existed. They knew my authority might block them. Their plan was not ignorance. Their plan was pressure first, clean up later. Get my parents to sign enough paper to create confusion. Record what they could. Push me into court after momentum had already moved. It was ugly. It was smart in the way dishonest things are smart when they count on decent people being slow. That evening, Kellen invited Aunt Petra, Cousin Lorne, and old Ferris Bell for Sunday dinner. He said it would be good for everyone to feel comfortable with the next step. What he meant was witnesses. Pressure with casserole, family faces around a table so my mother would feel guilty saying no. Dinner was roasted chicken, green beans, and a performance. Kellen told the table I had come home between situations. My father did not correct him. Noelle touched my mother's arm and said the new place would be easier. Aunt Petra asked how much land Beckett wanted. Kellen said, enough to make the offer generous. Ferris Bell, who had lived next door to Harrow's for 40 years and trusted almost nobody, said nothing at all. When I carried plates to the kitchen, Kellen followed me. You've been very quiet, he said. I'm a guest. You're not really that either. I rinsed a plate and set it in the rack. Then I'm just helping. He stepped closer, voice low. Don't make this hard for Mom and Dad, because your feelings are hurt. This family doesn't need your drama. I turned off the water and looked at him. What does it need? His smile came back. People who can carry weight. There it was. The family language. Carrying, burden, beggar, weight. They used those words like scales, but they never noticed who kept loading them. I hope you have what you need, I said. He laughed once. I do. He believed that. That was his weakness. Outside, as I was leaving, Ferris Bell stepped away from his old pickup and called my name. Tesslyn. I stopped. He looked toward the house first, then back at me. That Sloan man walked your backfield 2 weeks ago, before Bryce said a word about selling. You saw him? I see most things people think are private because they do them near my fence. He spat into the gravel. He had Kellen with him. They were pointing at the tree line like they already owned it. I thanked him and drove back to the inn with my hands steady on the wheel. By then, I had enough to stop them. But enough is not the same as timing. Timing is the part that decides whether truth lands like a warning or a verdict. The call came the next morning. My mother was crying so hard at first, I could barely understand her. He moved it up, she said. Who moved what? Kellen, the signing. It was supposed to be next week after Rowena looked. She stopped herself, like even saying the lawyer's name was dangerous. Now, Beckett says the offer dies if we wait. They're coming tomorrow at 2. Kellen says if we don't sign, your father will lose everything, and it will be my fault, because I got scared. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The room felt very still. Mom, I said, listen to me carefully. Do not sign anything before I get there. Your father doesn't want you there. I know. Kellen says you're trying to punish him. I know. He says you came back with empty pockets, and now you want control. I looked at the leather bag beside the desk, at the yellow county envelope, at my grandfather's letter, at the trustee certificate with my name, printed clean and legal beneath the seal. Let him say it, I told her. Tomorrow, he can read. After she hung up, I laid everything on the desk in order. The trust deed, the trustee certificate, the lifetime residence clause, the county copies, the planning map, the rough valuation showing what the land would become once the highway connector was public, Kellen's debt records, the message preview I had written down, word for word with time and date, Rowena's legal notice blocking any transfer without trustee consent. My grandfather's letter, 1 folder, 10 tabs, no speech needed. By morning, my father would still think I was a beggar at his door. By afternoon, he would learn that the door, the porch, the roof, the old walnut tree, the red barn, and every inch of land Kellen had tried to sell from under him had already been waiting for my signature. By morning, my father would still think I was a beggar at his door. By afternoon, he would learn that the door, the porch, the roof, the old walnut tree, the red barn, and every inch of land Kellen had tried to sell from under him had already been waiting for my signature. I did not sleep much that night. I sat at the small desk in the Blue Kettle Inn and checked every page again until the words stopped looking like words and started looking like weight. Trust deed, trustee certificate, residence rights, county copies, planning map, valuation, Kellen's debt, Beckett's message, Rowena's notice, Granddad's letter, 10 tabs, all clean, all in order. I did not practice a speech because speeches can shake when people interrupt them. Paper does not shake. Paper waits. Paper survives a loud room. At 9 that morning, I called Rowena Pike. She answered on the second ring, like she had been sitting beside the phone with her coffee and her sharp little patience. I told her the signing had moved to 2. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "That tells you something." "That he's scared," I said. "That he knows time is not his friend," she corrected. "Scared men can still be dangerous. Keep your voice low. Make them read. Do not let Beckett turn it into a family argument." Then she told me she would be available by phone, and the legal notice was ready to send to the county if anyone tried to record anything. Before she hung up, she said, "Your grandfather trusted you because you do not enjoy power. Remember that when they finally see yours." I held the phone after the call ended and let that line settle. I did not enjoy power. I enjoyed peace. But peace had been removed from the table by men who called pressure love. I went to the house before noon because I wanted to give my father one last door before I closed mine. He was outside near the barn, pretending to check a latch that had worked fine for 20 years. The sky was pale and cold, and the field behind the house looked brown and open, all that land Kellen had pointed at like a meal. My father did not look surprised to see me. Maybe my mother had told him I was coming. Maybe Kellen had warned him. Maybe he had always expected me to appear at the wrong time, carrying the wrong kind of truth. "Dad," I said, stopping a few feet away. "Before everyone gets here, let me look at the papers. Just once." He shut the latch harder than he needed to. "Kellen has it handled. Kellen has his own reasons." His jaw moved. You don't know what this family needs." "Then explain it to me." He finally turned. His face was tired, but pride still stood in front of it like a locked gate. "You came here with a suitcase and shame, Tesslyn. Don't dress it up as wisdom." The words were quieter than the ones at the door, but they cut deeper because he had time to choose them. "Kellen is trying to save us. You are standing around with your hand out, hoping somebody feels guilty enough to let you back in." I looked at the house behind him, at the upstairs window where I used to read under a blanket with a flashlight, at the porch where my mother had handed me Granddad's sweater like a secret apology. Then I looked back at my father. "Okay," I said. That was all. I had offered the last private chance. He had refused it. By 1:30, the Harrow dining room had become a stage. My mother had polished the table like a clean table could make a dirty thing respectable. Coffee cups sat near the good plates. Aunt Petra arrived in a burgundy coat and church perfume, full of soft worry and loud opinions. Cousin Lorne came behind her, already asking whether this was going to take long. Ferris Bell arrived last among the witnesses, his cap in his hands and his eyes sharper than anyone gave him credit for. Noelle stood by the window in her cream coat, checking her phone and pretending not to. Kellen moved around the room like a host, smiling too much, touching my father's shoulder, adjusting papers, telling my mother where to sit. He had dressed in a navy button-down and polished boots. He looked like a man who had confused dressing well with being right. Beckett Sloan came at 10 minutes to 2 with an assistant carrying a slim black case. The mobile notary arrived right after him, a middle-aged woman named Marla, with tired eyes and a careful voice. She set her stamp and logbook at the end of the table, not knowing she had walked into the middle of a family's almost disaster. Beckett greeted my parents like dear friends. "Bryce, Marnie, big day." Big day, as if my mother's hands were not gripping the edge of her chair. As if my father had not spent the morning swallowing fear and calling it leadership. As if Kellen was not standing beside a folder that could have moved 2 old people out of their own home in 45 days. I sat near the sideboard with my leather bag at my feet. No one asked why I was there. That was the gift of being underestimated. People forget to remove you from rooms where they plan to win. Kellen glanced at me twice, but he was too close to his prize to waste real worry. "Glad you came," he said with that brotherly smile he used in public. "This will help you understand how grown-up decisions work." Aunt Petra gave me a pitying look. My father looked at the table. My mother looked at me once, quickly like a person looking toward a window in a locked room. I gave her no signal. Not yet. Kellen cleared his throat at exactly 2 o'clock. "We all know this house has meant a lot to our family," he began. He used the voice he saved for funerals and bank meetings. "But Mom and Dad deserve peace. They deserve money in the bank and a place without stairs and roof leaks and land they can't keep up with. Beckett has given us a fair chance, and we need to be smart enough to take it." Noelle nodded like she was hearing scripture. Beckett folded his hands and looked humble. My father sat straighter. My mother stared at the paper in front of her. Then Beckett slid the purchase option across the table. "This simply gives us the right to move forward," he said. "Nothing confusing, nothing aggressive, just a clean path." That was the first lie of the hour. Marla, the notary, asked for IDs. My father reached for his wallet. My mother moved slowly, like every motion hurt. Kellen placed a silver pen beside my father's right hand. I watched the pen touch the table and felt time narrow. That pen was the small bridge between pressure and damage. Once it moved, the fight would become uglier. My father picked it up. Beckett almost smiled. Kellen leaned forward. My mother looked at me again, and this time she did not look away. I stood before my father could lower the pen to the page. "Before my father signs away a house he does not fully control," I said. calm enough that the room needed a second to understand I had spoken. Everyone at this table should know whose permission this sale actually needs. The room went still. Kellen turned first. "Not now, Tesslyn. Especially now," I said. My father's face darkened. "Sit down." I walked to my leather bag instead. "I will, after everyone reads." Kellen laughed once, sharp and false. "Reads what? Your feelings?" I took out my folder and placed it on the table beside Beckett's. "No, the title history." That changed Beckett's face. Not much. Men like him did not give away whole reactions, but his eyes moved to my folder, then to Kellen, and for the first time all day, he looked less like a guest and more like a man counting exits. I opened the first tab and laid down the certified copy from the county recorder. "This is the recorded deed placing the Harrow property into the Harrow Family Land Trust 12 years ago," I said. "That includes the house, the barn, and the 28 acres behind it." My father shook his head. "That's old paper." "Recorded paper does not get old because people ignore it," I said. I turned the page toward Aunt Petra, then toward Ferris, then toward the notary. "Bryce and Marnie Harrow have lifetime residence rights. That means they have the right to live here. They do not have the right to sell or transfer the property without trustee approval." Kellen stepped closer. "She's twisting it." "Then read it," I said. I did not look at him. That bothered him more. I opened the second tab. After Silas Harrow died, the trustee seat passed to me. I placed the trustee certificate in the center of the table. My name sat there in black ink, calm and legal. Tesslyn Harrow, successor trustee. For a moment, nobody spoke. Aunt Petra leaned forward, her perfume moving with her. Cousin Lorne stopped looking bored. The notary adjusted her glasses. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father stared at the page like it had appeared from under the floor. Kellen laughed again, but it came out weaker. "You? Granddad gave you control?" "No," I said. "He gave me responsibility. There is a difference." Then I looked at my father. "You called me a beggar at your door, but this house was already in my hands before Kellen put that pen beside you." My father's fingers opened. The silver pen rolled slightly on the table and stopped against his coffee cup. That tiny sound felt louder than Kellen had ever been. Beckett leaned back. "This seems like a family misunderstanding. It became more than that when you brought documents to a property you knew had trust restrictions," I said. I opened the next tab and placed the planning map beside his purchase option. "Your offer is $410,000. The proposed highway connector becomes public next month. Once that happens, this land is worth much more. Maybe 3 times more. Maybe more than that, depending on access." Beckett's assistant looked down. Beckett did not. "Speculation," he said. "Possibly," I said, "but informed speculation. The kind you were hoping my parents would not have before signing." Kellen slapped his hand on the table. "This is exactly what I told you she'd do. She came back broke, and now she wants control. She can't stand that I'm the one helping." My father flinched at the sound. My mother did too. I opened another tab. "Let's talk about helping." I placed my handwritten record of Noelle's phone preview on the table. Then, the printed draft Rowena had helped me prepare based on the language I had seen. Beckett wrote that once my parents signed authority, the trustee issue became your problem. He also wrote that your fee would release after the option recorded. The room turned toward Kellen slowly, like a door swinging in wind. My mother whispered, "Fee." Kellen's face went red. "That was for my time, for handling things." "You are not handling things," I said. "You are selling fear." Noelle stepped in then, voice tight. "This is unfair. Kellen has been under pressure. Everybody needs money sometimes." I looked at her, not unkindly. "Debt is not the sin, Noelle. Turning your parents into the payment plan is." That line landed harder than I expected. Aunt Petra made a small sound. Ferris Bell lowered his eyes, but I saw his jaw tighten. My father looked at Kellen as if seeing him through a window that had just been cleaned. I opened the next tab and laid down copies of Kellen's civil judgment, the lien, the collection filings. I did not read every amount out loud. I did not need to humiliate him for being in trouble. The room could see enough. Kellen needed cash, I said. Beckett needed land before the highway discussion became public. My parents needed clear advice. Instead, they got pressure. Kellen pointed at me. You dug into my life. You brought your life to their table when you used their house to cover it. His mouth opened, but nothing clean came out. Then I turned to the last hidden paper in Beckett's folder, the one my mother had not understood. This is not only a purchase option, I said. There is also a temporary authority form. Once signed, it would let Kellen speak for certain property decisions while the sale moved forward. My mother looked at Beckett. You said it was just so he could help with calls. Beckett's voice stayed smooth. That is the practical purpose. The practical purpose, I said, was to keep Bryce and Marnie from changing their minds after today. The notary's pen stopped moving above her logbook. That mattered. A neutral person had heard enough to become careful. Beckett closed his folder. I think it's best if we let the family discuss this privately. He stood. Kellen looked panicked. Wait. Beckett did not look at him. He was already stepping away from the table. I turned one more page. Before you leave, Mr. Sloan, Rowena Pike has prepared a notice for the county recorder stating that no transfer, option, or authority document involving this property is valid without trustee review. If your company tries to record anything connected to this parcel, it will be challenged immediately, and if your name touches this land again, it will touch it in court. For the first time, his careful smile disappeared completely. He gave one short nod, the kind men give when they are too angry to speak politely, and walked out with his assistant behind him. Marla, the notary, looked around the table and asked, Are my services still required? No, ma'am, I said. Thank you for coming. She packed her stamp with visible relief and left. After the front door closed, the house sounded different. No Beckett, no notary, no clean path. Just family, proof, and the kind of silence that makes people meet themselves. Kellen was still standing. His hands were on the back of a chair, knuckles pale. You ruined everything, he said. No, my mother said. Her voice was small, but it was there. Everyone looked at her. She stood slowly, one hand on the table. You almost did. Kellen stared at her like she had slapped him. Mom, leave the table, she said. He blinked. You don't mean that. I should have meant it years ago, she said. And this time, her voice did not break. My father had not moved. He was still looking at the trustee certificate. When he finally spoke, he sounded older than he had that morning. Silas trusted you with it? I answered carefully. He trusted me to protect it, not own it like a prize. Protect it. His eyes lifted to mine. There was shame there, but shame is not the same as apology. It is only the first room on the way. I didn't know, he said. You didn't read, I said. That was harder for him to hear than anger would have been. Anger lets proud people fight back. Truth gives them less room. Kellen grabbed his coat. Noelle followed him, crying angry tears that were not really about my parents. At the door, Kellen turned back. You chose paper over blood. I looked at him across the room, where my grandfather's portrait hung above the side cabinet. No, I chose paper because blood kept lying. He left then, hard enough that the door shook in the frame. My mother sat down after he was gone, like her legs had forgotten their job. Aunt Petra touched her shoulder. Lorne stared at the floor. Ferris Bell stood and put his cap back on. Silas would have liked that, he said quietly, and walked out before anyone could answer. I did not leave the house in chaos. That would have been easy, but easy had never protected anything. I opened the final section of my folder and placed Rowena's summary in front of my parents. Here is what happens now, I said. You keep your lifetime right to live here. The property stays in the trust. No sale, no option, no authority paper, no developer meeting without trustee review. Kellen's name goes nowhere near this title. If repairs are needed, we document them through the trust. If taxes are due, they are paid through the trust and recorded. And from now on, no paper gets signed at this table because somebody says there is no time to read. My father did not argue. My mother nodded through tears. For the first time in days, the house felt less like a thing being hunted. The next week moved slowly. Rowena filed the county notice. Beckett's office sent one stiff email saying they had decided not to pursue the property. Kellen sent me 5 messages. The first called me selfish. The second called me jealous. The third said I had humiliated him. The fourth said, family should not do this to family. The fifth was only 2 words, you win. I read each one once and answered none of them. Some messages are not questions. They are just noise from a door you finally locked. My father did not apologize right away. Men like Bryce Harrow do not know how to pick up words after dropping them for 66 years. But 10 days later, I drove out to the house to meet Rowena and my parents for the first real trust review they had ever agreed to attend. The porch light was straight. The front door no longer stuck. My father stood beside it with a screwdriver in his hand and saw me notice. Fixed it, he said. I see that. He looked down at the tool, then back at me. Door opens better now. It was not enough. Not for what he had said. Not for the years before it. But it was the only language he had learned so far. And for once, I did not translate it into more than it was. Good, I said. Doors should open right. Inside, my mother had set coffee out, but she did not busy herself to avoid me. She sat. She read. She asked Rowena questions. When my father tried once to wave away a paragraph, she put her finger on the page and said, No, I want to understand this one. I looked at her then, and she looked back. That was new. Not perfect. New. After the meeting, she walked me to my car without a sweater, without muffins, without hiding behind the weather. I should have opened the door, she said. That night, when he called you that, I should have opened it wider and told you to come in. I stood beside my car and let the truth sit between us. Yes, I said, you should have. Her face folded, but she did not look away. I'm trying to learn how. I nodded, then keep learning. I did not move back into the Harrow house. I did not become the family bank. I did not soften the rules because my father looked tired or because my mother felt guilty. The trust stayed the trust. The papers stayed clean. Repairs were approved properly. Taxes were paid on time. Kellen was removed from every contact list connected to the property, and if he drove by the house, he did not come inside. My parents had me as a daughter if they could learn to treat me like one. They did not get me as a wallet, a shield, or a quiet woman they could insult until they needed her signature. The house stayed standing that year. The highway meeting came and went. Land values rose exactly the way Beckett had known they would. The walnut tree turned green in spring. My mother planted tomatoes by the back fence. My father started reading every envelope that came from the county, slowly, with a pen in his hand. Sometimes he called me before signing anything. Sometimes he started the call with business, because sorry still sat somewhere behind his teeth. But once, near the end of summer, he said, Tesslyn, I need your eyes on this. Not Kellen's. Mine. It was not a full apology. It was not a clean ending. Families rarely give those, but it was a change in the weight of the room. That is my story. My father called me a beggar at his door because he thought the suitcase in my hand told him everything. My brother smiled because he thought I had come home empty. Beckett Sloan saw an old house, tired parents, and land he could take before the town knew its worth. But my grandfather had seen them all coming years before they arrived. He left paper where love might fail. And he left it with the daughter they kept leaving outside. So if someone tells you there is no time to read, read twice. If someone calls pressure family, step back and look for the profit. And if the quiet person in the room is holding a folder, be careful. She may not be there to beg. She may be there because everything you tried to steal was already in her hands. The end. Commentary, lessons, and discussion. Now let's talk about this story for a moment, because this was not just a story about a house. It was not only about a father, a daughter, a brother, and some legal papers on a dining room table. This story was really about value. It was about how people sometimes decide who you are before they actually know what you have survived, what you have built, and what you are quietly carrying. Tesslyn came back to her family home with a suitcase in her hand, and her father looked at that suitcase and believed he understood her whole life. He thought she was weak. He thought she was broken. He thought she had come back because she had failed. But the truth was completely different. She had not come back to beg. She had come back to protect something that everyone else was about to lose. And that is one of the strongest parts of this story. The father judged what he could see. He saw old jeans, a suitcase, a tired face, and a daughter standing outside his door. He did not see the documents. He did not see the years of work. He did not see the knowledge she had built. He did not see the trust papers, the legal authority, the county records, or the truth sitting inside her bag. This happens in real life, too. People often judge the outside. They judge clothes, money, status, job title, relationship status, or the way someone returns after being gone for years. But the outside is not always the truth. Sometimes the quiet person is carrying the strongest card in the room. When Bryce called Tesslyn a beggar at my door, that line was very painful because it was not just an insult. It was a judgment. He was saying, "You have no value here. You are not a daughter right now. You are a burden." And that kind of insult cuts deep, especially when it comes from a parent. A stranger can call you something cruel, and yes, it hurts. But when your own father says it, the pain goes to a different place. It touches childhood. It touches all the years when you wanted to be seen, respected, and loved without having to prove yourself every time. Tesslyn did not shout back because she understood something important. Some people insult you because they want you to lose control. They want you to become emotional so they can say, "See, this is why we don't trust her." Tesslyn did the opposite. She stayed calm. She watched. She listened. And that calmness became her strength. Kellen, the brother, is also very important to understand. He was not just a greedy person. He was the golden son who had learned that the family would always make space for his mistakes. This is a very real family pattern. In some families, one child can fail again and again, and the family calls it bad luck. Another child can succeed quietly, and the family still calls them cold, selfish, or distant. Kellen had been protected by that system for years. He knew how to speak to his father's pride. He knew how to speak to his mother's fear. He knew how to make himself look like the responsible one while using everyone else as a ladder. Notice how Kellen never says, "I want money." He says, "Mom and Dad deserve peace." He says, "This is a clean way out." He says, "We are protecting family." This is how manipulation often works. It does not always sound cruel. Sometimes it sounds loving. Sometimes it sounds practical. Sometimes it sounds like advice. That is why Tesslyn had to look at the papers. not just the words. Words can be dressed up. Paper is harder to dress up. Kellen's words said love, but the document said control. His words said safety, but the papers said transfer, authority, fee, and pressure. Beckett Sloan, the developer, represents another kind of danger. He is not family, but he knows how to use family weakness. He comes in with a soft voice, expensive boots, and clean sentences. He does not threaten anyone openly. He does not need to. He knows the parents are tired. He knows Bryce is proud. He knows Marnie is scared. He knows Kellen is desperate, and he uses all of that. This is why one of the biggest lessons from this story is never sign something just because the person across the table sounds calm. A calm voice does not mean honest intentions. A professional smile does not mean safety. A fast offer does not mean a fair offer. The story also teaches us that pressure is often a warning sign. Whenever someone says, "You have to sign now," "There is no time to read," "Don't call anyone else," or "If you wait, you will lose everything," that is the moment you should slow down. Real help can survive questions. Real help can survive a second opinion. Real help can survive a lawyer, a counselor, a trusted advisor, or even one more night of thinking. But scams and manipulation hate time. They hate questions. They hate sunlight. That is why Kellen moved the signing earlier. He felt Tesslyn getting closer to the truth, so he tried to rush the room before she could stop him. Marnie, the mother, is complicated. She is not the main villain, but she is not innocent in a simple way either. She loves Tesslyn, but she is weak in the moments when love needs courage. She gives Tesslyn a sweater and muffins after Bryce throws her out, but she does not open the door. That scene is quiet, but it says so much. Sometimes people offer small kindness after allowing big harm. They may feel guilty, they may care, but care without courage can still leave someone outside in the cold. Marnie's growth comes later, when she finally tells Kellen to leave the table. That moment matters because she does what she should have done earlier. She uses her voice. It does not erase the past, but it shows change. Bryce, the father, is also not a cartoon villain. He is proud, harsh, and unfair, but he is also scared. He is scared of losing the house. He is scared of looking weak. He is scared of admitting that he does not understand the papers. And because he cannot admit fear, he turns it into control. This is something we see in many families. A proud person may not say, "I am scared." Instead, they become angry. They become insulting. They push away the person who might actually help them, because accepting help feels like losing power. Bryce trusted Kellen because Kellen made him feel like he was still in charge. Tesslyn made him face the truth, and truth can feel humiliating to someone who has built his identity on control. But here's what makes Tesslyn's revenge so strong. She does not destroy the house to prove a point. She does not say, "You hurt me, so I will let you lose everything." She could have done that emotionally. She could have walked away and said, "They deserve it." But she does not. She protects the house because it is the right thing to do. At the same time, she does not let them use her again. That balance is very mature. She helps, but she sets terms. She protects, but she does not become the family bank. She remains a daughter, but she refuses to become a doormat. This is a major life lesson. Forgiveness and boundaries are not the same thing. Helping someone does not mean giving them unlimited access to hurt you again. Tesslyn did not say, "Everything is fine," because everything was not fine. She did not pretend her father's words did not hurt. She did not pretend her mother's silence was harmless. She did not pretend Kellen was just misunderstood. She protected what needed to be protected, and then she made the rules clear. That is not cruelty. That is self-respect. Another powerful lesson is that knowledge is protection. Tesslyn's power was not only money or legal authority. Her real power was that she read. She understood documents. She understood how people use paperwork to control others. She knew that a purchase option, a trust restriction, a trustee certificate, and an authority form were not just boring legal words. They were the difference between keeping a home and losing it. In life, many people lose things not because they are foolish, but because they are overwhelmed. Papers are confusing. Legal language is scary. Financial pressure makes people tired, and dishonest people know that. So, one lesson from this story is very simple. Read everything. Ask questions. Get help. Never let shame stop you from understanding what you are signing. The grandfather Silas is like the quiet wisdom behind the whole story. Even though he is gone, his decision protects the family. He saw the pattern before everyone else wanted to admit it. He knew Bryce was proud. He knew Kellen loved shortcuts. He knew Marnie might stay quiet. And he knew Tesslyn would listen before speaking. His line, "A house is not protected by love. It is protected by paper," sounds cold at first, but the story proves it true. Love without structure can fail. Promises can fail. Family loyalty can fail. But clear documents, properly recorded, can stand when emotions collapse. This does not mean love is useless. It means love needs responsibility. If you love a home, protect it properly. If you love your parents, do not pressure them. If you love your children, do not insult one and worship another. If you love your family, do not hide behind the word family while making secret deals. In this story, the people using the word family the most were often the ones damaging it. Kellen used family as a weapon. Beckett used peace as bait. Bryce used responsibility as pride. Tesslyn used truth as protection. The dining room scene is the heart of the story. It works because everyone comes into that room believing a different lie. Bryce believes he is making the hard but smart choice. Marnie believes she has no safe way to say no. Kellen believes he is about to win. Beckett believes the family is too confused to stop him. Noelle believes the money is already close. Aunt Petra and the others believe they are there to support a family decision. And Tesslyn sits there quietly with the truth in her bag. That is strong storytelling because the audience knows something is coming, but the characters do not know how powerful it will be. When Tesslyn says, "Before my father signs away a house he does not fully control," the whole power of the room changes. She does not scream. She does not attack first. She simply changes the subject from emotion to fact. That is why her reveal feels satisfying. She lets the documents speak one by one. First, the trust. Then, her trustee authority. Then, the low offer. Then, the highway map. Then, Kellen's secret fee. Then, the authority paper. Each page removes another piece of the lie. This is not random revenge. This is organized truth. And that is another lesson. If you want to expose a lie, do not only bring anger, bring proof. Anger may be real, but proof travels further. Anger can be dismissed as drama. Proof makes people uncomfortable because it does not need permission. Tesslyn knew that if she simply accused Kellen, he would call her jealous. If she accused Beckett, Beckett would call it a family misunderstanding. If she cried, Bryce would call her unstable. So she brought certified copies, records, maps, and written evidence. That is why the room had to listen. Kellen's collapse is also important. He does not collapse because Tesslyn insults him back. He collapses because his image breaks. He needed to be seen as the helpful son. The smart one, the one carrying the family. But when the truth comes out, everyone sees that he was not carrying the family. He was using the family to carry his debt. That is a very strong reversal. Earlier, Tesslyn was called the beggar. By the final scene, Kellen is the one exposed as someone who needed money badly enough to risk his parents' home. Beckett leaving is another realistic moment. He does not give a big villain speech. He does not confess. He simply tries to step away when the room becomes dangerous for him. That is how many polished manipulators act. They are brave when people are confused, but they disappear when someone informed enters the room. Tesslyn's warning about court and county notice removes his quiet exit. It tells him that the property is no longer an easy target. He leaves because the profit is no longer worth the risk. The ending is not too perfect, and that is why it feels real. Bryce does not suddenly become a warm, emotional father who gives a long apology. He fixes the door. He fixes the porch light. He says, "Door opens better now." That is small. It is not enough, but it is something. Some people do not know how to apologize in words. That does not mean we should excuse everything, but it does show that change sometimes begins awkwardly. Tesslyn does not over-romanticize it. She does not say, "Now everything is healed." She simply notices that the door opens better. That is a quiet, mature ending. Marnie's apology is more direct. She says she should have opened the door. Tesslyn does something very important there. She does not comfort her too quickly. She says, "Yes, you should have." That is powerful because sometimes people rush to forgive just to make the other person feel better. But real healing needs truth. Marnie needs to feel the weight of what she did not do. Tesslyn gives her honesty, not cruelty. And Marnie says, "I'm trying to learn how." That is a good line because it shows that change is a process. So, what can we take from this story? First, never judge someone's whole life by the moment you see them in. A person can look tired and still be strong. A person can come with a suitcase and still hold the key to everything. A person can be quiet and still be the only one in the room who understands what is happening. Second, never sign anything under pressure. If someone is rushing you, slow down. If someone says you do not need a lawyer, call one. If someone says the paper is just a formality, read it twice. Third, family love should never require blindness. You can love people and still check the documents. You can respect parents and still question a bad decision. You can help family and still protect yourself. Another lesson is about being underestimated. Many people know what it feels like to be the one nobody takes seriously. Maybe your family thinks you are not successful enough. Maybe they remember an old version of you and refuse to see who you became. Maybe they only call when they need something, but disappear when you need respect. Tesslyn's story reminds us that you do not always need to prove yourself with noise. Sometimes you keep building. You keep learning. You keep your records, and when the moment comes, you do not beg people to believe you. You show them the truth. There is also a lesson about parents and favoritism. Bryce trusted Kellen because Kellen fit the image of the son who could carry the family. But image is not character. Confidence is not honesty. Loudness is not leadership. A child who talks big is not always the one protecting the family. And the child who left, learned, worked, and stayed quiet may be the one who actually understands the danger. Parents can do serious damage when they freeze their children into old roles. The responsible one, the troublemaker, the golden child, the selfish one, the weak one. People grow. Families should pay attention. Tesslyn's final boundary may be the most important part of the whole story. She protects the house, but she does not hand herself over. She does not become available for every emergency. She does not let guilt control her. She says in her actions, "I will do what is right, but I will not let you use my goodness as a doorway to disrespect me." That is a lesson many people need. Being kind does not mean being open to abuse. Being helpful does not mean being responsible for everyone's bad choices. Being family does not mean you must accept every insult and still show up with money. If we look at the title again, it becomes even stronger after the story ends. My father called me a beggar at his door. He never knew his house was already in my hands. At the beginning, the title sounds like revenge. By the end, it becomes more than revenge. It becomes irony. He thought the door gave him power. He thought he could decide whether she entered. But the truth was bigger than the door. The house, the land, and the legal protection behind it were already connected to her name. He was standing in front of a house he did not fully understand, insulting the only person who could save it. And maybe that is the final lesson. Be careful how you treat people when you think they have nothing. That moment shows your real character. Bryce failed that test. Kellen failed it completely. Marnie failed it at first, then slowly tried to change. Tesslyn passed it because she did not let their cruelty turn her into someone cruel. She stayed clear. She stayed prepared. She protected the house, but she also protected herself. So when you hear a story like this, do not only enjoy the revenge moment. Look at the warning signs. Look at the pressure. Look at the silence. Look at the way people use shame to control others. Look at how important one folder of truth can be. And remember this: sometimes the most powerful person in the room is not the loud one, not the richest looking one, not the one sitting at the head of the table. Sometimes it is the quiet woman near the sideboard, holding a folder, waiting for the exact second before the pen touches the page.